Hello viewer, I'm Zach, and since 2016 I've also held the moniker No More Updates on PlayStation. Throughout the years I've platinum and completed over 450 games, including some well-known difficult ones, and after many years of watching some amazing content creators, I decided it was time to start sharing my journey with the world as well. Currently, I'm working to try to ensure a new video comes out at least every 2 months. I hope you enjoy seeing what my experiences are like, and hopefully seeing my videos get better in quality as I continue making them. I appreciate you stopping by to check out the vid, and hope you enjoy this episode of the Platinum Journey.
Jackpot.
Devil May Cry is a series that wasn't actually supposed to exist. Originally, the game was developed to be the next Resident Evil after RE3, but Capcom pulled the plug on that nearing the end of the development of the game. Given the progress they'd made so far, lead on the project Hideki Kamiya moved on with it, but restructured the game into what we now know as Devil May Cry, with our new protagonist, Dante, front and center. As someone that doesn't typically play games for the story, this is one that I'm actually quite fascinated with. If you're curious about more of the story behind this amazing series, I actually highly recommend checking out this nearly 3-hour timeline deep dive by creator Eruption Fang on YouTube. As for this video though, I'm going to take you through the journey of completing all this game has to offer in terms of obtaining the coveted Platinum Trophy on PlayStation. Full disclosure, I've completed the game on both the PS3 and PS4 versions, and would say if you have any notion to give it a try yourself, definitely do the PS4 version over the collection on PS3. If not for just simply the load times being significantly better. But with all that out of the way, let's dive into what my Platinum journey was like completing Devil May Cry on PS4. The game starts with a brief retelling of the history of the legendary Dark Knight Sparta, who was once a, legendary Dark Knight for the Demon Realm. In a classic villain becomes hero twist, he turns from bad to good and decides to spend his days protecting humanity. Many years later, he finds himself having fallen in love with a woman named Eva. And long story short, they have twin boys, Dante and Virgil. Dante's the good guy, Virgil's the bad guy. Eventually though, Sparta's past catches up to him and both he and Eva are killed, leaving the two boys to figure out their own path in life. After this intro, we find Dante in a shop when a mysterious visitor, Trish, shows up. She tries to kill him at first as a test to see if he is really the powerful demon hunter he claims to be, and then after obviously proving himself, he hears her out. She explains the powerful demon Mundus is going to be resurrected and try to take over the world, so she needs Dante's help to travel to Malay Island and put a stop to it. Finally gaining control of Dante, I made my way up a single path and jumped onto a ledge to collect my first blue orb fragment. 4 fragments make a whole orb, and a whole orb increases Dante's health bar. I then went into the castle to officially start Mission 1, Curse of the Bloody Puppets. Like anyone would, I start by getting myself familiar with the controls, jumping, shooting, sword slashing, and all of those things. I don't have any of the skills unlocked available in the game, and only because I played the game originally on the PS2 do I have any real idea what I'm even doing. I initially struggled to gather some red orbs, which is the primary currency of the DMC games, but finally after being successful I continued into the castle. Moving through, I was destroying some of the objects around the environment to find more hidden blue orb fragments, and finally was able to get my first completed blue orb, earning me my first trophy, Blue Demon. Some more rooms in and I was introduced to my first enemies, the marionettes. Now this first fight is actually not mandatory as I discovered in later playthroughs, but I figured since I was playing on normal difficulty, it was a great opportunity to start getting used to the combat and maybe even try to complete the stage damageless for a separate trophy. However, that quickly took a turn for the worst, as in the very next enemy encounter down an elevator, I took some damage, so that idea went out the window. I fought through the room of marionettes, ensuring I took note of the different variants for another trophy I'll explain a little bit later, and made my way back up. I finished off the rest of the puppets and ended the first mission after 7-ish minutes with a B rank. The better the rank, the more red orbs you're rewarded, and there is a trophy for getting an S rank, but I know I'll get it eventually, so on to Mission 2. Mission 2, the Judge of Death, starts with a trip through a corridor that's going to become our temporary home in Mission 4, but for now, I headed to the end of it to find a pretty interesting display. There was a sword that was sticking out of the wall, and when Dante goes to interact with the sword, it flies out and lands directly in his chest, and from the ground, he arises with the newly acquired weapon, Alistair. For now, I proceeded into the next room where I obtained another new weapon, the shotgun, and oh boy is it a step up from his twin pistols, Ebony and Ivory. They have their strengths, but the shotgun just deals insane damage in this game when used as direct fire. It's not the strongest weapon we'll acquire, but it definitely packs a punch. And shortly after this room, I'm in another open area fighting some more marionettes when I'm able to reach a S-rank combo using Alistair and earn my next trophy, Thunderstruck, for doing so. Depending on your combo rank, the enemies will drop more red orbs when defeated. Higher is better, with S being the highest in the game, and this is the first of 2 S-rank weapon trophies knocked out. Once the puppets were dispatched, I made my way through the area and back into the same room where I obtained the shotgun, but before I could leave I was introduced to another new enemy, the Sin Scissors. These ghostly creeps flying out of a painting try to cut me open with their comically large scissors, but a shotgun blast or two are enough to take them out and proceed through the door. On the ground there are a few tiny orange spiders, not foreshadowing at all, and the same wall that held Alistair before now lets me interact with it to transform it into a doorway I can enter to end the mission. After 9-ish minutes, I end with a C rank and move on. Before starting the mission, I buy my first upgrade, Stinger level 1. At some point I'm going to need to obtain all of the upgrades for the weapons, but for now I start with this one just because I only had so many red orbs to spend, and move on with the mission. Mission 3, Destroyer of Ardor, starts in the new room I just entered, and before I can leave through a big door, it closes in front of me with a barrier, so I have to go interact with a stone pillar that zaps the barrier open. The back and forth nonsense in this game does tend to get silly, but anyway, I go out the now open doorway and proceed across a long bridge. And it's at this point I really feel how slow Dante moves, because going across this bridge feels like it takes much longer than it actually does. At the end of the bridge, I interact with a wall that has a lion's head on it and an inscription telling me to go back where I just came from. Seriously? Okay. So I go halfway back across the bridge before lightning strikes me and destroys the bridge, causing me to fall into an underwater path. Proceeding to the end of it, I'm surrounded by another new enemy called the Sargasso? Look, I don't know, pronounce it however you want. They die very quickly with a single shotgun blast to the face, and once all 6 are gone, I ascend the portal back to the bridge. With that done, I move back into the giant room where the laser beam was initially, interact with the tablet, but before I can pick it up, the very first boss of the game, Phantom, crashes through the ceiling to stop me. Phantom is a lava spider with a scorpion-like stinger. He swipes with his arms and tail, causes lava to erupt from the floor, and shoots fireballs. The way most people defeat him is by attacking his open mouth when he leaves himself available to attacks. How I defeated him is from a technique I saw watching speedruns of this game, where you jump and downward slash onto his back, called the Helmbreaker. The higher you jump in this game, the more damage you deal when you slash down with Alistair. So by using the wall to get some extra jump height, and also using Devil Trigger, which doubles my damage, I take him down after narrowly escaping death. First try, baby. After the spider is defeated, before ending the stage, I actually go back outside to the broken bridge to get a hidden blue orb fragment. Also, this leads me to my first secret mission. It takes me into a special version of the underwater pathway where I now have to defeat a single Sin Scissor with only a single hit. Despite being Secret Mission 1, this is probably the toughest, if not the toughest, secret mission in the entire game. You see, you have to parry the attack of the double S perfectly, leaving it wide open for a well-placed shotgun blast. But seriously, if you are not within licking distance of this enemy, the shotgun will not kill it in a single shot, and then the mission is technically failed despite letting you proceed to kill it. And thankfully, because I had already practiced this on the PS3 version, which took me at least 10 tries, I did this on my second attempt and was awarded a blue orb fragment and the trophy, "Can you keep a secret?" for completing my first secret mission of the game. After that, I proceeded to finish the mission with an A rank and got the trophy Arachnophobia for surviving an encounter with Phantom, meaning, you guessed it, he'll be back later. Mission 4, Black Knight, starts with me completing 2 secret missions. The first is found by going back into the room where I just fought Phantom, and now the secret mission starts. For this one, I have to defeat 100 Phantom babies within 30 seconds, and then all you have to do is just spam Ebony and Ivory. They are by far the quickest way to defeat all of these because they will automatically lock onto whatever enemies are within their vicinity and closest, thus taking out huge swarms of the baby Phantoms. Beat this one on the first try with just 2 seconds left, got my orb fragment, and headed to the next mission. Now, on my way to the third secret mission, I'm ambushed by Phantom in the corridor. Defeating him here is technically optional, but he's not hard to beat, and you get 500 red orbs for beating him, which doesn't sound like much, but just wait. We'll be taking advantage of this very shortly. So I moved to the end of the corridor and entered the third secret mission. For this one, I have to defeat another 100 Phantom babies, but I'm not allowed to use any weapons. This one's only a little tricky because the camera constantly switches angles, but overall, not too difficult, and I beat it on my first try for another blue orb fragment. Now, Devil May Cry does not feature any sort of chapter select, at least on this first game. So I knew once I beat it on normal, I'd have to bump up the difficulty to hard and start from the very beginning. Well, I'm the kind of gamer that likes to get ahead early and grind early, so I have as much advantage moving forward as possible. So what does that have to do with this game right now? Well, like I said before, defeating Phantom in that hallway gives me a massive 500 orbs. Again, not a lot by itself, but if you repeat this process nearly 100 times, it adds up. which is exactly what I did. I slaughtered Phantom time and time and time again, over and over and over. I repeated the same loop of start mission, bolt to the trigger point of the corridor, kill Phantom, save game, reload game, repeat, and got it down to a science where it would take me roughly 30-ish seconds for the whole process, which is another reason I recommend completing this on the PS4 version. It just loads so much faster. So you might be asking yourself, why did I do any of this? Well, there are a few reasons. The first thing is that there are 3 trophies tied to collecting a total number of red orbs. 10,000 orbs gets you a trophy called Seeing Red, 25,000 orbs gets you a trophy called Blood Flows Red, and 50,000 orbs gets you a trophy called Redemption. Now, you don't need to have these all at a single time, just over the course of the game. And I could have done this across all my playthroughs, but I figured I'd knock it out now as a result of the grinding. The second reason is so I could go ahead and max out my Devil Trigger gauge and buy all of Alistair's skills. Maxing Devil Trigger, oddly enough, is not a trophy, but it definitely is helpful. The more runes you have, the longer you can use the mode. So I wanted this maxed, and with all of Alistair's skills already obtained, I could have access to powerful abilities like the ability to fly or throw lightning from my hands, which will definitely come in handy a little later in the game. The final reason was so that I could stock up on items from the shop as quickly as possible. You see, in Devil May Cry 1, Dante can buy up to a certain amount of items from the shop before it knows he's technically at the limit. For example, if the supposed max limit is 10 for an item and you find another item out in the wild, you can still pick it up and the game will register that you have 11. But the shop will not let you buy another one unless you're at 9 in your inventory. However, if I have 9 on me and then I find one out in the wild, now I have 10, so the shop also won't let me buy one because it reads that I'm at 10 already, which means I've technically lost on the ability to get an extra item. Does that make any sense? Okay, well look, it doesn't really matter. Just trust me when I say these are very helpful items, and especially when I get into the Dante Must Die difficulty at the end of this journey, it's going to be worth it. So after doing this process way longer than I needed to, I settled into Mission 4 to actually complete it. Now that I'm officially working to complete Mission 4, I let Phantom live this time and headed out into the courtyard area and skipped his fight. Once out here, I destroyed a lion statue that was hidden behind a purple wall, and when that was destroyed, a new enemy popped out, named Shadow. He's a demon shadow panther with a massive core inside of him and has the ability to morph into spikes and scythes and jump around all over the place. On this difficulty, it's not too troubling, but when I work on a trophy later that requires me to record every enemy's file, it'll definitely be a pain. I defeated it by shooting it until it reveals its core, stabbed at the core to make it blow up, and then headed back into the corridor from before to do a little bit of backtracking. See, Mission 4 actually contains a third secret mission. I hadn't done it before, mainly because I was doing all the grinding, and it requires going through the shadow fight before it can be activated, so I didn't want to do that yet. But to start Secret Mission 4, I headed back to the room at the start of the game that had the elevator to descend, and now that I've beaten Shadow, the secret mission appears when I descend again. In this secret mission, I had to fight 3 shadows at once, and the caveat is that I only get 1 attempt to do it. Now obviously I could reload my save, but that means starting the whole mission over again, which I really didn't want to do, despite the fact that I've already done it over 100 times. So I used patience, took them all out to earn a fragment, which was also enough to get me another whole blue orb. So with all that done, I finally headed back to the courtyard area where I fought the first shadow, and now was introduced to a new enemy type called the Sin Scythe. These are very similar to the Sin Scissor enemies, but they have scythes as their weapon type. I spent a good amount of time here, and now's a good time to talk about one of the most annoying trophies in this game called I Read You Like a Book, which is obtained by unlocking all entries for every enemy in the status menu. You see, every enemy has a certain number of entries tied to it. Some enemies have different attacks they perform, and this obviously includes bosses, and you need to see all of them, some of which can only be seen in specific circumstances. Most of these are likely animations you'll see without ever thinking about it. One enemy like that is the Sargasso, which has 2 entries, and honestly, if you don't see both of them, then I couldn't even begin to tell you why. Other enemies, however, like the Sin Scythe for example, have 12 entries. Again, some of these are simple ones like simply seeing the enemy for the first time and obviously killing it too, but others seem incredibly random and may likely be attacks you never see without waiting and waiting and waiting. This isn't the only enemy, but I'm telling you, this enemy kept me waiting on this section for an additional 20 minutes just to see a single attack. I'm not even sure 100% what I did to finally get this attack to happen. I think it might have had something to do with using Ebony and Ivory to try to shoot it, which is an otherwise useless strategy when playing regularly. but it seemed to work, and I finally got to see the stupid enemy turn its scythe into an umbrella and suck the soul out of Dante. Another stupid part of this trophy is it requires you to see certain enemy files that result in Dante taking damage or dying. So you have to purposefully let an enemy kill you or damage you nearly to death before you register some of the files. It's utterly ridiculous. Finally, after witnessing that stupid attack, I moved on to the final area of the mission, which is a boss fight against Nello Angelo. Because I had already gotten practice on the PS3 version, I was actually pretty prepared for this fight. I had already gotten really good at a speedrunning technique called slash canceling. I'm definitely not perfect at it, but doing this technique basically stun locks Nello Angelo so I could transition his phases much quicker. I could have used a holy water to end the fight very quickly, but the result was the same either way. I got the trophy You're No Angel for surviving an encounter with Nello Angelo and finished the mission with a B rank. Mission 5, Guiding of the Soul, is definitely the quickest mission of the entire game. At the start of the mission, you automatically are given an item called the Melancholy Soul that just exists with you and will extinguish if you do not turn it into its correct home within the time limit. On normal difficulty, I had 3 minutes to complete it, and to progress, I had to quickly defeat a single shadow. Higher difficulties there are more, so I beat it ASAP and booked it out to the main progression door, used a Helmbreaker to go to the bottom of the tower very quickly, turned in the soul, and that was the mission, done in 1 minute and 25 seconds. Because I didn't take any damage, I finally unlocked the trophy called Untouchable for completing any mission with no damage, and also Smashing Sensation for completing any mission with the infamous S rank, earning the maximum number of red orbs. Too bad I don't really need those anymore. Mission 6, Evil of the Waterways, didn't really have much going on aside from introducing me to 2 new enemies that I now had to unlock more files for. Yay! The first one was called the Beelzebub, a bug-like crawling enemy that didn't pose any threat, and unlocking all 6 of its entries honestly didn't take that long. The other new enemy is the final fight of the mission against a Death Scissor. This is a stronger variant of the Sin Scissor with its own 9 entries to unlock. Woohoo! So I drugged the fight out longer than it needed and got 8 out of 9 of them in one go. I ended the mission after that and moved on to Mission 7. Mission 7, Holding the Key of Ardor, was yet another very quick mission to complete. At the start of the mission, there's an optional fight against Phantom in another hallway, but you can just run to the end of it and skip the whole thing. The only thing of note here was that it contained a secret mission to complete, which marked the 5th one overall for me to get done. In this mission, I traveled back to the room where I fought the Beelzebub for the first time, but now going inside triggers a secret mission to start. In this one, you have to get one of the new enemies, the Cyclops, to kill the other one that's in the mission with you with its attacks, but you can't attack yourself. So basically, you just have to get one to kill the other one. Silly as it was, it gave me a chance to knock out some of the entries for this enemy, of which there are only 3, and I beat it on the first try. Got my orb fragment and moved on to complete the rest of the actual mission. Mission 8, The Legendary Dark Knight Returns, starts with Dante on the roof of the castle about to proceed when off the top rope, Phantom dives in and tells him, to which Dante replies,
Finally! I was getting tired of playing your childish games.
and the fight ensues. This fight is the only one in which Phantom will use his final new attack, which was the last entry I needed in the enemy files for him to swing his tail around as an attack. Once I registered that, I finished the fight to earn the trophy Squashed Like a Bug for finally defeating Phantom. He falls through the ceiling and gets impaled, resulting in his true death, and I proceed with the level. The next area contains a key item, the Trident, and the following area from that I jump down into contains the best gun in the entire game, the grenade launcher. Oh man, this thing is the beast. It's going to help me immensely from here on out. I jump down from one more area, plunge the Trident into a mechanism, race down a hallway before the new door that opened closes, and proceed to end the level with yet another S rank. Mission 9, New Strength, took Dante out of the immediate castle area and into a separate connected part of the island. Here, I encountered the next new enemy on my list of annoyances, the Blade. These are anthropomorphic basilisks that have razor-sharp spikes they attack with, both as swords and as ranged projectiles. They're one of the enemies that has a file where you can only get from basically dying, so because I'm currently trying to complete this entire playthrough without using a yellow orb, which I'll discuss later, I decided I'll just clean that up in my second playthrough. I dispatched them and moved on to the next area where I completed a simple platforming section to be rewarded with my new weapon, Ifrit. I headed back outside the platforming area, and before I could proceed, I was introduced to the newest servant of Mundus, Griffin. This crooked beaked bird is massive, shoots red lightning, and just sucks to try to fight in this area. Normally, I would skip the fight entirely, but because of trophies, I had to fight him here. I used my new Fiery Devil Trigger mode and Ebony and Ivory to start doing damage, which actually resulted in me getting an S rank, and I earned the trophy Hot as Hell for getting an S rank using Ifrit, so I'll take it. With him defeated, I moved into the next section of the level and was introduced to the newest enemy called the Fetish. This is an upgraded version of the marionettes I've been fighting that are much tankier and can blow fire. Now in this particular section, they didn't pose much of a threat because all I did was use Alistair's Devil Trigger and spam the grenade launcher. When I'm telling you this weapon is powerful, I really mean it's powerful. In the final area of this level, I was fighting a group of fetishes, and at this point I decided to do a little farming to hopefully knock out all of their enemy files. While working on it, I did unlock the trophy Bookworm for collecting 50% of the enemy files, so that was something. But I finally gave up trying to farm a specific attack and just moved on to the next mission where I knew there would be an excellent area to work on trying to get the last one that I needed from this enemy. I earned the trophy Bird of Prey for surviving an encounter with Griffin, and the level was done. Mission 10, Canyon of Mist, is a level that requires Dante to follow a white light to decide between two paths and do this 3 times. Picking the wrong path results in restarting the entire maze, if you can really call it that, but the only thing that complicates this is that in each of the areas, there are enemies that the white light can get attracted to, forcing you to defeat them before proceeding. Not really anything difficult, and the first area is marionettes, fetishes, the second area is blades, and the third area is shadows. Especially on normal, this really isn't a crazy task. However, I decided to take this opportunity to use the first area to try to grind out the final attack entry I needed for the fetish, since the place had a much more conducive camera angle to my goal as opposed to mission 9 at the end. When I tell you that it only took about 5 minutes of trying to get this one attack where the fetish jumps on Dante's back and slices him, you might not think that that's really that bad. But considering the level itself only takes about 3 minutes to complete, it really feels like it just drags on, just waiting and hoping that the enemy finally does the attack. But thankfully I got it just by antagonizing the enemy and turning my back to it. Which in hindsight, I probably should have realized what was the trigger for it, but oh well. Apparently a lot of people struggle with finishing this enemies from the list, so I don't feel crazy or out of place for thinking otherwise. I moved on through the area, completed the level with no trouble, and that was that. Mission 11, Fate, opens with a fight against a new enemy type called the Death Scythe. This is the upgraded form of the Sin Scythe, and as you may have already surmised, it has its own 7 entries to unlock. I didn't really try to unlock a specific number of files while fighting this one. I basically just let the enemy do its thing because I knew that there would be more opportunities later on to finish it. Thankfully, this enemy isn't one of the tougher ones to complete either. And after this, I went through a door where I originally started the mission from, and this was how to access the 6th secret mission, Wandering Ghost. For this one, I was in a fight against a bunch of Sin Scissors, but all I actually had to do was use my jumping skills to reach a blue orb fragment that was hovering above them. It's very simple to do, and I completed it in about 4 seconds from starting the secret mission. Completing this one earned me the trophy, the Secret 6, for completing 6 out of the 12 secret missions in the game. Continuing on in the mission, I found some more blue orb fragments and eventually came to a key item called the Sign of Chastity. I carried it with me further into the level before putting it into a pedestal to reveal a chalice I could collect. Doing this triggered the next boss fight with our favorite antagonist swordsman, Nello Angelo, making his electric return. Back for round 2, Nello doesn't really have any new moves or anything of note in this fight, and it basically plays out just like the first one did, although this time there aren't little areas for Nello to teleport to once enough damage is done. Slash canceling came in clutch yet again, and I beat him pretty simply. He disappears once again, I placed the chalice in its rightful spot, and went on to complete the mission. I earned the trophy Broken Halo for surviving my second encounter with Nello Angelo, and got another S rank. Mission 12, Ghost Ship, starts with Dante descending into an underground area with a ship he can jump into and explore. And if you're not already familiar with this game's underwater mechanics, let me be the first to tell you that they suck. Seriously, the game was not designed for this, and it really should have just been left out entirely. However, thankfully there are only a small number of times you'll use it in the game, so it could be worse. At any rate, I jumped in the ship, proceeded to the second floor where I defeated some enemies and obtained the only weapon that you can use underwater, the needle gun. After this, I jumped back into the water on the previous floor and obtained one of the single most broken items in the entire game, an untouchable. Now, this isn't the very first one that I've gotten in the game, but just remember it. And when I say that this item is incredibly busted, so every single time that they are available to find them, I made sure to pick them up, trust me, you'll see why later on. So with that collected, I made my way to the deck of the ship and interacted with the ghostly swords on the captain's quarters. This spawned another death scythe that I quickly disposed of, and then a cutscene ensued of the ship leaving its docked spot. It transitioned into a section where none other than Griffin appears for round 2, and this fight is definitely annoying. On normal difficulty, it really wasn't that bad, but later on in Dante Must Die, I really hated this fight. I took him out pretty quickly, and the ship crashed at what almost looks like the same location, but it's actually a little bit different. I went to enter the captain's quarters, and the mission ended, earning me the trophy Cold Turkey for surviving my second encounter with Griffin. Before starting mission 13, I finally had enough orbs to unlock the rest of Ifrit's moves, which earned me the trophy The Devil's in the Details for purchasing all of Dante's skills. With that done, I started mission 13, Abyss, another pretty short level with honestly nothing noteworthy to discuss. The mission literally is just moving from the top of the ship to go all the way back out the hole you originally entered the ship back at the start of mission 12, and that's it. I literally finished this mission in 1 minute and 47 seconds. It would have been faster if I chose not to fight the enemies in the level, but I'm still not really complaining about the short time, even having fought them. So after completing the level, there's a short intermission area before the next one actually starts. This isn't the first time this happened in the game either. At the very start of the game, on the pathway into the castle was another instance of this intermission where it's a place you can run around without actually being in a mission yet. With this intermission, I turned around, headed back into the ship, and proceeded to make my way to the captain's quarters to start my next secret mission 7, called Water Cell. This is an entirely underwater secret mission. Yay! But it's simple, as the only goal is to use the needle gun and defeat 8 blades. Again, pretty quick to complete, and earned another blue orb fragment. Mission 14, Deep Darkness and Towering Mountains, is a mission with a long title, but it's not actually that long to complete. It starts in an underground area where I have to activate a lever, causing the floor to spin and spikes to shoot up from the ground. All of which can be avoided by using one of Devil Trigger Alistair's moves that allows me to spin and fly forward in whatever direction I'm facing at the time. While in this spinning motion, Dante is invincible, so I took advantage of this and avoided as much damage as possible. From there, I made my way through a mountainy area that has a few enemies that are skippable if you have enough red orbs to pay the fee to go into the next section, which I did, and that was where I faced a lot of marionettes. I took the time now to kill all of them, trying to get only one left, so I could hopefully get the final entry needed for them to knock one more enemy off the list. After finally getting the enemy to do the attack, where it jumped onto Dante's back and slashed him, I finished the mission, and that was the end of both the mission and another enemy complete. Now, at the start of Mission 15, Wheel of Destiny, I had to make a lengthy trek back all the way to the starting area of Mission 14 in the underground spinning room. Making my way back there, I was able to start the 8th secret mission, Treasure of the Reaper. This secret mission just needed me to kill all of the enemies in this small corridor area. It was another fight against 3 shadows, but all in all, it really wasn't difficult. I put down the beasts, got another blue orb fragment, and completed the secret mission. With that out of the way, I headed back to the main section I came from, and this time I needed to head over to the entrance of the Colosseum. The main door required a key item, but the doors on the right and left could be entered from the help of another key item I obtained already called the Emblem Shield, which I acquired at some point, whenever that was. Anyway, the only path required is to head to the right side, because at the end of a little jumping puzzle is the key item called the Pair of Lances, which are the ones that open the main door to the Colosseum. However, the left door contains a few items I need because of trophies, of course, and in this side there's another jumping puzzle to complete. But also, by defeating the enemies on the lower section of it, I'm able to trigger a blue orb fragment that can actually easily be missed. Don't ask me how I know this, but even more than that, it's a mirrored location from where the Pair of Lances are. And this side also contains the final firearm of the game, the Nightmare Beta, along with the trophy Gun Collector for collecting all guns in the game. Honest opinion, this weapon sucks. The only reason I used it at all was to unlock a few enemy entries that required it, but other than that, it's a complete waste of space and didn't help me once. In premise, it seems like a powerful gun, but the fact it requires Devil Trigger runes to fire it, thus draining your precious DT gauge, really deterred me from thinking it was anything worth using. So, put the gun away until later, and moved into the main part of the Colosseum. Once inside, Griffin showed back up for one more fight, and this is definitely the most challenging fight with him. On normal difficulty, it didn't prove to be any kind of challenge. I simply threw fireballs with Ifrit, used the grenade launcher, and also used Air Raid, which is a lightning bolt attack with Alistair's Devil Trigger, and took him down pretty easily. For finally killing Griffin, I earned the trophy Plucked. I went down the elevator that crushed Griffin and collected the key item, the Wheel of Destiny, to end the mission. Mission 16, Nightmare of Darkness, starts with me collecting one of the few whole blue orbs scattered in the overworld. Most of the time it's all fragments I find, but this time it was a completed orb, so I was actually pretty stoked to get more health. After ascending the elevator and leaving the Coliseum, I turned around immediately and went back inside to actually trigger secret mission number 9, Stairway of Tranquility. A very simple mission with a stairway of non-aggressive Sargassos, and all I need to do is jump up them correctly to reach a blue orb fragment at the top. A lot of people say this mission can be a bit challenging, and I totally understand that. Maybe it was the practice that I had on the PS3 version, but I knocked this one out on the first try and was very thankful to have it done. Back in the regular mission, I traveled all the way back to the castle from the Coliseum area. Re-entering the castle took me to the main lobby that I started the game in back in Mission 1, and here I needed to trigger a switch to open a doorway. However, once the switch was activated, the newest enemy showed up, the Plasma. This is a doppelganger enemy that's made of pure lightning energy. It has the ability to shapeshift into either a bat or into an electric version of Dante. It's a simple enemy to defeat, and I didn't bother trying to get all of the files unlocked for it because I knew that I would just be able to knock him out later. I did fire the Nightmare Beta at it once to unlock one of the stupider entries, and then just moved on with defeating it and continuing in the mission. With the Plasma defeated, I made my way back to the room where I originally fought Phantom, and here there was now a puddle of black liquid that I could interact with in the center of the room. Doing so started the boss fight against the amalgamation of pure chaos called Nightmare. This boss is the most complicated boss in the entire game in my opinion, and it also has 14 entries to unlock. Most of them do come naturally, but a few do require a bit of extra thinking, such as using the Nightmare Beta on the boss. Damaging the boss requires hitting the core at its center, just like the shadows, and spoiler alert, we have to fight this boss 3 times. The amount of damage done to the core stays though through every one of these fights, and the more the core gets destroyed, the stronger the boss gets. So you need to beat up the core, but you don't actually want to beat it up too much. Well, what actually destroys the core is how many hits you do to it. So the strategy for this boss actually involves using Ifrit to do charged attacks. Charged attacks with Ifrit deal massive damage slowly and with less amount of hits on the actual target. So this is beneficial because it results in the core not getting damaged or destroyed as quickly for later fights in the boss. And hopefully, all of that made sense. Additionally, this boss has the ability to send us to what I'm going to call the Shadow Realm. It's this area that doesn't really matter much in normal difficulty, but later difficulties is basically a must. Going here, Dante fights a few Sargassos and then a shadow variant of one of the previously defeated bosses. In the first Nightmare fight, you refight Phantom. In the second one, you refight Griffin, and the third is, well, you should already know. Defeating this Shadow Realm enemy teleports Dante back to the Nightmare fight, and it deals massive damage against it. It also has the other benefit of keeping the switches lit longer that are scattered around the boss arena. These need to be activated to reveal the core, so the longer the switch is up, the more time you have to deal damage. With that incredibly lengthy explanation out of the way, I actually needed to deal a lot of damage and break the core on this playthrough because I sure as heck didn't want a more challenging fight on harder difficulties. And there was an enemy file entry for destroying the core. So after all of that, I finally took down Nightmare, but before I finished the mission, I headed back through the corridor leading up to the boss fight to find a door to the secret mission, Shadow of Darkness. For this one, you have to find all 3 of the hidden shadows in the castle and defeat them. It didn't take long to find them thanks to the guide I was watching, but they aren't really hidden anyway. Also, during the secret mission, I actually was able to get the final entry for Shadow as well, a feat that took much longer on the PS3 version, so I was grateful. I grabbed my blue orb fragment and went to finish the mission and earned the trophy Night Terrors for surviving my first encounter with Nightmare. Mission 17, Parted Memento, is supposed to start with Dante traveling through the demon portal he jumped in at the end of Mission 16. However, by going back out through the portal and jumping across the broken bridge and reaching the other side without falling results in starting the secret mission. This was definitely the most annoying one to find, but this mission can actually be cheesed pretty easily if you have the ability unlocked for Alistair that lets you fly while in Devil Trigger. Thankfully I did, and I was able to complete the secret mission without any issue. Back through the portal, the mission actually starts. This is a twisted world of the castle, so it feels familiar, but it's not quite as we remember it. One such doorway that we enter takes Dante into a new outside area. And before entering back into the castle, on the other side of the field we crossed, our newest enemy arrives, the Frost. These are like blades, but their entire body is enveloped in ice. Their slashes and projectiles are all ice-based, and they can also heal themselves if they go into their diamond ice formation. While not required, it really seems like Ifrit is the better weapon to use against them, which makes sense because, fire melts ice and all that. I let them hit me because I was trying to finish off their files, but rather than let myself die as I was getting close to death, I finished off the last one and ended with 9 out of 10 entries. Once I finally entered the room, I proceeded all the way to the end of the corridor and into a new room that contained a large dinosaur skeleton shooting fireballs. The goal here is to deflect 3 fireballs back at it, which requires some pretty precise timing. Slash too early or too late and you just take damage. And thankfully it didn't have to be consecutive hits back, as I discovered on later difficulties. After the third one gets hit, the dino explodes, revealing some hidden platforms available to jump on, but more importantly is a key item called the Quicksilver behind it. I placed the Quicksilver into a doorway after leaving the dino room to enter into the next area, the courtroom. Here, Nello Angelo was waiting for me, and before the fight begins, he takes off his helmet, revealing that he was none other than Virgil this entire time.
A man with guts and honor. I like that. But it's a shame you serve Mundus.
Eagle Double G.
Snoop Dogg!
You know I'm mobbing with the D.R.E.
Yeah.
He's been corrupted to serve Mundus, which really isn't explained in this game, so I definitely recommend that video that I talked about earlier if you want some more context. Anyway, this final fight with Virgil starts, and this is the only place to get a few of the final enemy entries required for Nello Angelo in the logbook. So after taking him down to nearly defeated, I tried waiting around to let him do these final attacks. But my cockiness got ahead of me and resulted in a death. And again, because I'm trying to beat this playthrough without using any yellow orbs, which I will explain later, I had to restart the entire mission. Thankfully I was smart and made a save before this, so even though I had to restart the entire mission, all of those enemy entries for the Frost as well as the secret mission I wouldn't have to complete a second time. With the mission restarted, I headed back through the area with the Frosts, and thankfully was able to get the final entry I needed for having them shoot icicle projectiles at me. And then I made my way back to the dino room, grabbed the Quicksilver again, and proceeded back to the fight with Virgil. This time was better about managing my health, but I still couldn't get him to perform any of the new attacks. I knew I'd need to fight him again on the next playthroughs, so I just ended it now and figured maybe they were performed only on hard or DMD mode. With Virgil defeated, he drops his amulet that is the opposite half to the one Dante has, and then the mission ends, earning me the trophy Fallen Angel for finally defeating Virgil, aka Nello Angelo. Mission 18, Spirit Stone Elixir, starts by granting Dante the new sword Sparta. This is the true form of the Force Edge, which is the blade Dante started the game with, and it's the original weapon the legendary Dark Knight himself used. This weapon is powerful, but it comes with the cost of not allowing you to use Double Trigger or any of the powerful abilities you've purchased for Alistair or Ifrit. So, while I did use it in a few areas in later playthroughs, this time I really didn't have anything to do with it. At this point, I went into the newly created portal and made my way through the portrait that revealed itself. After navigating through an underwater section and getting another blue orb fragment, I went into a room that contained the key item, the Philosopher's Egg. From here, I collected a few more blue orb fragments and continued on, placing the Philosopher's Egg into a fancy incubator in the next room over. This started the second boss fight with Nightmare. Aside from a change in scenery, the fight plays the exact same as the first one. Nightmare doesn't have any new moves in this phase that I could tell, and I didn't even go into the Shadow Realm this time before finally taking it out. After it was done, I checked and saw that I have 12 of the 14 entries for the boss completed, knowing that the final 2 are only available in the final fight. Nightmare melts away, and so does the Philosopher's Stone shell, revealing the key item, the Elixir, and then the mission ends, awarding me the trophy Good Night for fighting Nightmare for the second time and prevailing. Mission 19, Enter the Corrupted World, starts with Dante taking the portal that was created at the end of the previous mission. After following a kind of but not incredibly confusing winding path, Dante enters into a mirrored world of the same room and the courtyard where he originally met Nello Angelo. In this area, I struggled for longer than I'd like to admit trying to jump up to an area for a blue orb fragment, and then next to it was the final blue orb fragment available in the game, so I was one step closer to finishing maxing out Dante's HP, but I'll be saving that trophy to the end. Additionally, in this courtyard area, the final new enemy of the game spawns, the Nobody. They move and jump around on 4 limbs, but technically have a 5th one that sticks out of their back. They dance around and throw giant eyeballs for attacks. Look, they're just strange. But I need to see all of their attacks, so after this first encounter, I was at 6 of 8. Not a bad start if I do say so myself. With them defeated and the newly acquired Philosopher's Stone key item, I made my way back through the portal I came from and back across the broken bridge to the room where I first fought Nightmare. By interacting with the liquid pool in the room, I fall through the floor into a new realm which lets me use the stone to open up a portal into the demon realm, and the mission ends after that. Mission 20, Showdown with Nightmare, is just a boss fight. It starts in a room with a few frosts that spawn, but they can be skipped and proceed into the Nightmare's room for the final showdown. Once here, a cutscene plays where it shows Trish acting as if she's trapped and Dante goes into heroic mode to save her, but it turns out to be a trap. It turns out Trish has been working for Mundus all this time. Plot twist. I proceeded to start the fight as usual by lighting the switch to damage the core. I also let myself get sent to the Shadow Realm where the boss for me to defeat this time was Nello Angelo. Doing this dealt massive damage to Nightmare, and I also made sure to see the 2 final attacks I needed, which were to watch Nightmare create a cage from the ceiling and also watch him throw a blade out from his body like a boomerang. The second one took a little while for him to trigger, but it happened eventually, and I just proceeded to kill it afterwards. When Nightmare's finally gone, I earned the trophy, The Nightmare is Over. The ending cutscene shows a scene where Trish is about to get crushed, but Dante saves her, and I'll just let it play out.
Dante! Dante, why did you save my life?
Because you look like my mother. Now get out of my sight.
So with the revelation he only wanted to help because she looked like his mom, the mission ends and I moved on. Mission 21, Living Cave, is what I would consider the real penultimate stage. There are actually 23 missions in total, but my opinion is that Mission 22 and 23 should basically just be considered one combined effort. But I digress. At the start of the mission, I made my way over to the area to pick up a few items, mainly back in the room where I fought Nightmare. There was another untouchable, the God tier item, as will be displayed very soon. But after that, I found the hidden entrance to the final secret mission of the game, number 12, Hidden Bangle. Completing the secret mission meant following a linear path that would split partway through, and I needed to take the correct pathway. Considering I was following a guide, this was a piece of cake. The end of the correct pathway would result in a fight against a nobody, so I also used this as an opportunity to hopefully finish the last of the entries I needed. I got one of them, but I still needed one more to finish off this enemy file. I also found the last full blue orb available in the overworld within the secret mission, so the only one I had left was available to buy in the shop. But again, I'm saving that as my last trophy, which I'll explain at the end of the video. After the pathway was finished, I entered into a fiery room that had another dinosaur like the one from before, but this one was just breathing fire over and over. To solve the puzzle here, and hopefully save you time if you're watching this and planning to attempt the game yourself, all you have to do is jump up to the platform in front of the dino, which honestly I couldn't tell you how to do it, because the platform you can't see in the camera angle and you kind of just have to get lucky. Then simply just go up to the mouth of the dino and attack it. Once destroyed, some frosts spawn in, and after killing them, some platforms show up. And following these platforms, you're finally able to reach the objective and collect the hidden bangle, which also earns the trophy, The Secret's Out, for completing every secret mission in the game. So the hidden bangle is an item you can use to freeze time against enemies, but it costs Devil Trigger runes to use and honestly doesn't really help much on any difficulty higher than normal, so it's another wasted item to collect. With that done, I proceeded through the rest of the mission, defeating some more nobodies, defeating a few plasmas, and then finally reaching the final switch I needed to activate to reveal the doorway to the final boss and the end of this mission. I made my way through the door and the mission ended. Mission 22, Legendary Battle, started with me getting the trophy Table of Contents during the cutscene because it was unlocked for unlocking every initial enemy file in the status menu. So this meant I have finally encountered one of every enemy. I skipped the cutscene, but basically, Mundus gets annoyed that he needs to fight the Blood of Sparta once again, as originally the legendary Dark Knight of Sparta sealed him away many years ago. So now he's back again, and this time, one of Sparta's sons stands in his ways to stop him. The giant statue of Mundus comes to life and flies off into the sky, and Dante transforms into the max Devil Trigger mode, only during this boss fight. With the first part of the fight being a shoot-'em-up type boss fight, that honestly sucks. You're supposed to fire shots at Mundus to build your DT gauge, and then use your DT gauge to fire a devil dragon thing at him. Once Mundus' health is gone, Phase 2 starts with him falling to the ground and being engulfed into a pool of lava. There are platforms along the outside of him, and small ones that get closer to him you're supposed to jump on, all while avoiding nonsense attacks he fires. Or you can do what I prefer, which is to use the amazing Untouchables, which make Dante completely immune to all damage and max out his Devil Trigger gauge. With this, you just run up to Mundus in the lava, again you're invincible, and just slash away with Mundus without any regard to your health whatsoever. I tried doing this fight legit, quote unquote, the first time, but it just sucks. So I was just resolved to use what the devs gave me, and I have no regrets at all. Now, the Untouchable doesn't last forever, so when it did run out, I had to quickly use another one because my health did start draining from being in the lava. Thankfully though, I had plenty of them, so I popped another one, finished the demon off once and for all, resulting in the end of the mission and the trophy the devil went down to for defeating Mundus. Mission 23, Mother's Guide, starts with Dante needing to escape Malay Island before it collapses on him. There's plenty of time to escape, so the timer doesn't really matter here honestly, and I made my way all the way back through the Demon Realm, back through the castle, and finally reached the hangar room from long ago, only to then crash to the floor and be ambushed by a disgusting form that Mundus has tried to take as one last-ditch effort to defeat me. This fight really isn't anything of note, and the timer is gone at this point, so there's no pressure here, especially on the normal difficulty. Once Mundus' health is depleted, Trish shows up after presumably having died from before, and tosses Dante his twin pistols, and infused with Trish's electric powers, together they blast away Mundus one final time and send him into oblivion, with the final word he hears being the legendary catchphrase from Dante.
Winner.
Jackpot.
After the fight, there's a gameplay section where Dante is flying a plane through a cave system, but I tested it out and you can't actually die in this section, even if you let the plane hit every single obstacle, so I just let it play out and completed my first playthrough of DMC1. The final cutscene shows Trish and Dante as partners, now in his new shop called Devil Never Cry. The game ends and I earn the trophies, warming up for completing the game on normal difficulty, and the devil made me do it for completing the game without using any yellow orbs. So finally, I'll explain. Yellow orbs allow you to continue the mission you were playing from the most recent checkpoint, and now that I'm moving into harder difficulties, these will be very useful as death moving forward is definitely more likely. With my first playthrough done on normal, I unlocked the next difficulty, which was simply called hard. Now, despite the name change, the difficulty really wasn't anything crazy to write home about. I don't recall how many, if any, times that I died in this mode, but I was thankful it gave me one final attempt to gather as many items in the overworld as I possibly could. Additionally, from here on out, any location that previously held a blue orb fragment now contains a yellow orb, so stocking up on these was awesome because oh boy did they come in handy on my next playthrough. So with this playthrough I had two goals. The first was to complete the enemy files I was missing, and the second one simply was to beat it as quickly as possible, knowing I still had the hardest playthrough left to overcome. So booting it up, I took a look at all the files I had left to collect. The enemies that I was complete on were the Marionettes, the Shadow, Beelzebub, Phantom, Cyclops, Griffin, Sargasso, Fetish, the Frost, Nightmare, and finally Mundus. So that means the enemies I still have left to complete are the Sin Scissors with 1 entry left, Sin Scythe with 2 entries left, Death Scissors with 1 entry left to go, Death Scythe with 1 entry left, Nello Angelo with 2, Blade with 3, Nobody with 1 entry left, and finally the Plasmon with 1 entry, making a grand total for me to still discover being 12. And since some of these entries are tied to either dying or taking damage while my health is critically low, I wasn't worried now because I could finally use yellow orbs if needed. So it's time to get on with it. The first enemy I found on the list of enemies I still needed to discover was the Sin Scythe. And for this first entry out of the 2 I needed, I was supposed to get a critical kill against the Double S after deflecting their Scythe throw attack. It took over 7 minutes of jumping, shooting, and respawning them before finally I was able to knock it out and move on with my life. The next enemy encountered was the Blade, and these entries wouldn't be too difficult to obtain. The first was for simply juggling a blade in the air with ebony and ivory. For this one, I launched one in the air and then spammed my guns to perform a quick juggle and earned that one no problem. A simple one to get that I just didn't bother with in my initial run. The second entry was a little more annoying. I needed to let one of them get me down to red health, meaning I was close to dying, and then they would perform a special attack. Sometimes. It wasn't guaranteed to happen, but the only definite part was that it would only trigger when my health was that low. I eventually got them to perform the attack, but honestly I'm not quite sure what it actually even was. They jump around so often that I believe it was when one of them jumped very high in the air and then slammed down, but I honestly couldn't tell you. At any rate, I actually didn't die from it, so I quickly ran away to make a save with my entries and continued on as the final entry from them was only accessible when fighting them while underwater. I returned back to the same location after triggering some Sin Scythes to spawn, and this time I was determined to get the final entry. Fortunately, it only took me 3 minutes to obtain this time, and it was another critical attack. This time I needed to deflect their attack, but it wasn't a throw of a scythe I needed to deflect. Or maybe it was something else entirely, and honestly I'm not even sure. Who cares? It's done, and this enemy is finally complete. In the same mission, I made my way back to the room where I originally found the shotgun. In here, I was able to spawn a Sin Scissor and took the time to get the final entry I needed for it. All I needed to do was watch a group of them fly around me in a circular motion. It took almost a minute of waiting for these knuckleheads to do their job, but I was finally able to move on. Enemy file complete. On the next mission, in the same location where I originally fought Shadow, on this difficulty and Dante Must Die, a Death Scissor shows up. This is a perfect chance to get the final entry I need for it and to be done with this one. And it only took me 7 seconds from when I started my recording, and I swear I completed this task on my first playthrough, because all I needed to do was jump up and Helmbreaker the enemy's head. The next enemy was in Mission 6, and it was against the Plasma. In the same room where I first encountered the Beelzebub on my initial run, a few Plasmas now spawn in that room. For this final entry, I just needed one of them to transform into its bat form and fire lightning blades at me. It took about 20 seconds, but I finally got the attack to occur, and that enemy was now completed. The Death Scythe was the next enemy up for me to complete, and the entry for it was yet another one I can't believe I didn't already have. See, the Death Scythe will periodically shoot air platforms from the ground that you can get caught in, and it causes you to jump weird. Well, there's an entry for that, so I completed this one in about 10 seconds after encountering it. Entry complete. Finally back in the water, I could complete the last entry for the Blade. Unfortunately, this was yet another attack that would only trigger if my health was in the red, so I had to wait for the Blade to finally take my health down low enough and then hope for it to use the attack against me. The worst part of this was just the waiting, as the Blade only fires a few shots before then swimming away before firing more. So most of my time was spent watching this thing swim into Dante's face like it was trying to give him a kiss. Eventually, it lowered my health low enough, one shot away from death, and finally did the spinning attack I needed to see. The stupid part was that the attack actually missed me entirely. I'm not complaining that I didn't die, and thankfully I got the entry so I could finally move on. Only 2 enemies left to complete now. Nello Angelo was the only boss that I had left, and the next enemy for me to discover. And this one was a little risky. During the third fight with him, after he loses about half his health bar, he will possibly start using spectral swords to attack from a ranged distance. These swords can be fired like projectiles, or they can spin around him as a protective shield. Well, I needed both of these to happen. So in my first attempt of the fight, I was able to get him to shoot the swords at me like projectiles, and that's one done, but I died and had to restart the fight. Thankfully, in my second attempt, he got more defensive with his blades, so I was able to see them surround him like a shield and I could destroy him. Doing this resulted in the final entry unlocked, so now all that was left was one entry for the Nobody. Back in the same spot where I first fought them, the Nobody returned, and this entry didn't take long to unlock. The giant eyeball that they can manifest can be used as both a blunt weapon attack from them, or they can throw it as a projectile, and I needed to see the latter. One of them finally threw the eye, and immediately the trophy, "I read you like a book," popped, signaling my completion of the enemy files. Thank God. One final fight with Mundus and another flight through the cave later, and I was done with my hard playthrough. This earned me the trophy Boiling for completing this mode. I also unlocked the legendary Dark Knight costume for Dante, but sadly I wouldn't be able to use it since using a new costume meant starting a whole new playthrough back on normal difficulty. Well, at currently about 12,000 words and 25 pages in length, I don't want to bore you with a bunch of details. So for this Dante Must Die playthrough, I'm basically just going to hit the highlights of what changed with the boss fights, as in what really made them harder, and get through all of the details that way. I'm not going to bore you with any of the rest, because I've got more Devil May Cry videos to make, so hopefully you stick around for those as well, and I don't want to lose you on the first one. So with that in mind, let's get on with this. Phantom 1's fight was a lot more challenging just because of how much damage he dealt and how little you did. Dante Must Die really stepped up the difficulty, and this was honestly the first real challenge. Sure, the regular enemies now can also activate Devil Trigger mode themselves, but honestly, they didn't really matter much in the grand scheme of things. It was the bosses. And Phantom 1 did only take me 2 tries, but I definitely almost died on that second one too, so I knew it was going to be rough. Mellow Angelo 1 was actually really not that bad. The tactic here was just to become a master of slash canceling. He has more health, but the same tactic worked against him, so as long as he didn't hit me in return, I would be fine. Because if he did, I certainly was going to feel it. And unfortunately this fight did take me 2 tries, but let me be the first to tell you, I was definitely getting more humbled with every step of this journey. Griffin 1 was skipped thanks to the fact that I already had Ifrit and the trophy, so we'll move on to Phantom 2. Now, I'm not including the optional fights with Phantom in the hallways, since they also could be skipped. However, for this fight, I took advantage of something I actually had never known about this game when I was originally playing back on the PS2. See, you fight Phantom on a roof that has a glass ceiling portion, and Phantom likes to jump. You may know where I'm going with this. If Phantom lands enough times on the central glass portion of the roof, he actually will fall through and the fight will end regardless of his health. So I definitely took advantage of this opportunity and just spent my time waiting around for him to jump so I could have him land where I needed him to end the fight and claim my victory. Completed it in 1 try and didn't think about it again. LO2 played out basically like a tankier version of the normal and hard mode playthroughs. He didn't add any new attacks to his arsenal, but attacking him felt like trying to chop down a tree with a Q-tip. Seriously, I felt like my slashes were just tickling him. This fight took me 3 attempts to complete, but really the hardest part was just the battle of attrition to pay attention if he teleported around and get him back into a pattern where I could do more slash canceling. Griffin 2 was up next, and oh boy was this one a doozy. On the PS3, I took at least 15 tries to beat this boss. I just could not get the hang of what I was supposed to do correctly to dodge his attacks and get a good angle to shoot him with my Devil Trigger guns, and it was honestly a nightmare. Thankfully, that practice led me to complete it on my second run on the PS4. It still wasn't fun though. I was happy I figured out where to stand to get the optimal damage, but I was really just glad it was over with in the end. Griffin 3 was a pain. The way this fight works out is that after enough damage, Griffin crashes to the ground and from then on he can only be airborne for short bursts. However, that doesn't mean he gets any weaker. He has a few different patterns he can send out lightning. They can be shot in vertical bars with incredibly minimal space to stand between them and dodge, or they can be shot in horizontal patterns that attack at you from the most recent place you were positioned. So if on the ground, they will come at me as if I was standing still on the ground. If I jump, the bar shoots out in the air, and so it's this back and forth game of trying to bob and weave and jump dodge and all kinds of maneuvering, all the while if the bolts do hit me, they deal insane damage and cause me to lose whatever momentum I had. It took me 5 attempts to finally beat this beast, and I have no shame in admitting I used holy waters to take out the last bit of his health. I was getting sick of watching this bird spit lightning at me and just wanted it done. So when his health got low enough, I started using the items in my arsenal, especially since I knew I wouldn't be using holy waters really anywhere else in the match. Nightmare 1 was a fight that really wasn't anything too crazy. I beat it on my first try, but I definitely took quite a bit of damage. The really annoying part was that I had to go into the Shadow Realm and basically had 2 boss fights at this point because I had to defeat Phantom again. Albeit, he was a little weaker, but that didn't mean his damage did anything less to me. The benefit here was that it did a massive amount to Nightmare's base form, and so after this, I stuck with the charge attack strategy with Ifrit and ended the fight on my first attempt. For Nello 3, on the PS3 version, I struggled a lot with this fight. For some reason, I just always got the worst luck of him teleporting away and shooting his spectral swords at me. It took a while to finally get a good run, but the crazy part of what I learned was how good the Devil Sword Sparta was in this fight. So like I said before, Sparta is a sword that inherently doubles the attack power of all of your attacks at the trade that you cannot use Devil Trigger. Well, considering Devil Trigger was limited anyway, and it wasn't going to fly around and have me do lightning attacks during this fight, I figured the extra damage would be more beneficial if it was consistently usable, and this was definitely the move. So I took this strat to the PS4 version and beat the fight on my first try. It also helped I got Nello Angelo in a pretty good consistent lock with my slash canceling. The end of the fight was me just spamming Holy Waters, and I have no shame in admitting that. It worked, and I moved on after one attempt. Nightmare 2, another fight I'm thankful to have practiced a strategy on the PS3 version. The change in setting in this one actually was the biggest culprit of most of my deaths in that game. I just seemed that Nightmare's attacks always found a way to deal massive damage to me no matter where I was standing. However, there was a strategy I saw someone use on some miscellaneous YouTube video where they showed a lone pillar you can actually hide behind that somehow causes Nightmare to 99% of the time do the same action, leaving his core exposed. With the switch activated, of course. You still have to do that part. And this allowed you to get consistent damage in. Well, after watching this method, learning it on the PS3, and then honing it on the PS4, I completed this fight in a single try, and I didn't even need to go to the Shadow Realm. However, I won't deny that I did use a single Vital Star and a single Untouchable during the fight. Can you blame me though? I just wanted it over with. Nightmare 3. No pillars or anything to hide behind, and so I knew my best bet would be to defeat the Shadow Realm for this fight, and that's exactly what I did. I traveled there, beat the Shadow version of Nello Angelo, and that initial damage boost was exactly what I needed. Nightmare 3 honestly felt pretty easy, and I think the biggest reason for that was that the fight really just plays the exact same, and I was really good about keeping my number of hits on the core low, so the boss didn't grow exponentially in strength with each fight. I took it down after one attempt, which did involve using 2 Holy Waters for the final blow, but look, I needed to use them at some point, and Mundus doesn't really give me a good opportunity to, so I figured I would just do it here. And speaking of which, the Mundus fight just sucks. Definitely one of, if not my least favorite boss of all time in any game. It just changes the feel of the game and doesn't actually feel like a rewarding victory in the end. And no, that's not really because I just used items to help me along the way. I really just hate the change of pace for the shoot 'em up style in the very beginning that honestly, even on normal difficulty, just feels like a slog and doesn't make a lot of sense. Phase 1 of this fight, I used 11 Devil Stars to continually replenish my Devil Trigger just so I could spam Demon Dragons at Mundus. I don't have time to try and master the one-time mechanic of this boss phase. And for Phase 2, you already know. Just like in normal and hard mode, I use the Untouchables. 4 of them to be exact, and I couldn't have been happier to finally have this game complete. With the boss defeated, I finally earned the right to watch the infamous Dark Soul with Light cutscene, so here it is in all its glory for you to enjoy.
My mother risked her life for me, and now you too. I should have saved you. I should have been the one to fill your dark soul with light!
This was my mother's. Now I'm giving it to you. My father's also here now. Rest in peace.
Following this, I blasted through the final fight with the monster version of Mundus, completing my final playthrough of Devil May Cry. After the final cutscene, the mission results showed and the trophy Combustible popped, signifying my completion of Dante Must Die difficulty. So now I just need one trophy to finish the platinum. You see, when I started this series, I was actually working to complete every single game in the Devil May Cry series, and I had a certain order I wanted to unlock them. So I needed to save a single trophy I could easily unlock for my final one. And once I had everything staged in every single game, all I would need to do was go into each one in the order that I wanted them unlocked and pop my final trophy. And so that's exactly what I did. My last trophy was for maxing out Dante's health by acquiring all the blue orbs in the game. So I turned on the game, bought the last one from the shop, and earned the trophy Blue Devil, and then at long last, the Platinum Trophy, aptly named Platinum Trophy, was finally mine. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to go a little off script and just kind of talk about what I thought of the game and my overall impressions. So, it was definitely a wonderful blast from the past to play through this game again. Like I said, I played it originally on the PS2, and I just had so much nostalgia for it. It was a game that I spent a lot of time playing, and honestly, I think I only ever beat the normal difficulty, because back then, I really didn't challenge myself with a lot of games. So if it was anything harder or whatever, I very likely just stayed away. I probably didn't even know that I actually unlocked the hard difficulty, if I'm being completely honest with you. The game was a lot of fun, and going through it again for these trophies really wasn't so bad. I don't think it's the hardest one in the series at all. I would argue that it's also not even the hardest one of the original trilogy. I definitely still think that that goes to 3. And I definitely can say that now, having platinumed all of them. But that's a separate video, so we'll talk about that one later. With this one, though, I think it definitely is clunky in the camera control portion, especially because you don't have any camera control. Everything is already set for you, so the camera follows you or it stays in set locations. Again, that comes from the fact that it was originally supposed to be a Resident Evil game, so I get it, but it definitely is just something that's pretty antiquated, and it was not the greatest thing to have to deal with. So in some sections where the camera would just switch back and forth and not really give you so much of an open perspective, it made it kind of hard to really know what I was supposed to be doing. Not to mention, unlocking the enemy files was a true pain in the ass. Definitely not something that I was enjoying doing, mainly because, I think I might have even said this in the video or in the regular script, I don't like the idea that I had to specifically let enemies attack me to see certain like parts of the, or to unlock some of the entries. Obviously I don't have a problem with an enemy attacks, but if I'm really trying to be incredibly technical and not take any damage, for example, is there something that I have to watch in order to unlock a part of the enemy files? I don't know. I mean, that's just kind of where I'm at. Maybe you could trigger all of these things without ever taking any damage from the attacks, but considering some of them require you to be in red health, that really just didn't make a lot of sense to me. But overall, those are my simple gripes of the game. It's nothing that would in any way, I say, prevent me from recommending the game to somebody, especially if you're going for the platinum. I even had a buddy who I did recommend the game to, and he just beat it on normal difficulty, and he had a pretty good time. So all in all, definitely a fun game to play through. One of the few Devil May Cry games that doesn't have more than 3 playthroughs. The only other one being Devil May Cry 2. And technically that has more than 3 playthroughs just because of the fact you have other characters to play as. But anyway, that's not really worth getting into. I'll save that one also for the DMC2 video that I sadly will be making next. So I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for sticking around and for watching this one. If you did stick away all the way through the end, I appreciate it. I appreciate you. Like, subscribe, do all that stuff, do all that jazz, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode of The Platinum Journey. Thanks so much. Have a great one.